Okay, let us now look at how to create an app in iOS, what in development environment we are going to use, etc. Let's cover those topics. So let me start by sharing the presentation. So your first iOS app. First thing you need to be able to develop the app is the development environment. And some of you have already asked me this question about if a Mac is essential, and the answer is yes, because iOS app development can only be done on a Mac. So that's why you need to have a Mac and you need to install what is called Xcode. Xcode is the development environment created by Mac, created by Apple, the company behind all this, behind the iPhone and behind Macintosh computers, etc. They have created this Xcode and you need to install it. And if you already have it on your Mac, you will go into this panel is called the dock. Some of you may be new to Mac, so you might want to watch a tutorial on how to use a Mac, what the differences are compared to Windows. And all your applications are in this application icon. Sometimes the application icon may not look blue like it does here, but that's a matter of settings. And then you look for something called Xcode. So here I have Xcode. And if you don't have Xcode in your list of apps, you will want to open the App Store app on your Mac and search for Xcode. And then the very first result should say Xcode with this blue icon with a hammer, and you install it. Right now it is inviting me to update. There is apparently an update available to Xcode. So I'm not going to do that now in the middle of recording a lecture. We'll just continue here now. So that's what you need. Okay, so if you don't have it, pause here and install Xcode, and then you can continue. So when you run Xcode, it is going to give you a screen that looks like this. Welcome to Xcode. And it will invite you to create a new project, clone an existing project, etc. So we'll say create a new project. I'll click on that. And then it will create a new project and ask me certain questions. This is the create new project dialog. And here you see what types of projects you can create. There is application, which is what we are going to do. And with under application, there are different types of applications. It allows you to create. And for example, a game, it gives you certain functionality pre-built, inbuilt into the bare bones project Xcode will create for you. Augmented reality app, etc. You can also create a framework or a library. This is something, people do this. For example, if you're creating functions to manipulate any image, you could bundle it as a library that other people could import in their own projects, their own apps, and use it. And simultaneously, it allows you to create Mac OS apps. So if you're creating apps for the Mac operating system to run on the computers, the Watch OS for the Apple Watch, for Apple TV, and other types of app. And of course, there are multi-platform app will run on several of these. For now, let's focus just on iOS and choose iOS and the first icon under the application, which says just app. Now it's going to ask you to give a product name. So I want you to follow this convention. Same as before, like it says here. Let's go to the next slide. So where it says app used to be called single view app. In the newer version of Xcode, it just says app. That's what we did. And I want you to name it with your name, first name, last name, and hello world. Okay. And there are some other settings I want you to carefully choose. So give your name here. Sometimes this may not be readily available. You could also just say none in theme and it should be fine. Organization identifier, follow this scheme, ca.georgian.yourname. It's just for you to be able to track your projects and for me to also be able to see different people's work. And now these are important questions, the next three. The first question is asking is interface. So if you look here, there are two options, storyboard and Swift UI. Swift UI is newer. It was launched about a year ago, maybe a little bit over that. And storyboard has been around for a much longer. And most of the apps that you run into today are probably written with storyboard. And that's what we are going to start off with. We'll look at Swift UI later on when we're looking at advanced topics, because it is a little bit more involved to use it and set it up as compared to storyboard. Most people find the storyboard approach more intuitive. So choose storyboard here. If you don't choose it, you will not be able to follow the rest of the tutorial. So be sure. And under life cycle, it gives, well, now there is only one option, UIKit app delegate. That is fine. And then in language, you have two options, Objective-C and Swift. Early versions of iOS supported only Objective-C. So it's slightly different language from Swift. And later on, they moved to Swift. And today, Swift is the language of choice. It is mature. It's been around for a few years now. So we will work with Swift in our courses. So you can choose Swift. And these you can uncheck for now. I will talk about these in a future lecture. Even if you leave them checked, it won't harm you. It will just create some extra folders and files. So make sure that your options screen looks like this. The name of the project has your name in it. Interface is storyboard and language is Swift. And then we'll say next. It's going to ask you where to create this project. By default, it creates an Xcode projects folder under your documents. And within that, all your projects reside. You can leave it in the default. That's what I will do here. So as soon as I say create, my project will get created, will get saved on the hard disk, all the files that Xcode has created for me, and it will show me here. So let's see what we want to do next. Let's explore it, compile, and see what it does. So what we will do right off the bat, first thing we will do is we'll compile it and see what Xcode has given us. So at the top here in Xcode, you see this triangle. This is to build and run the current scheme. What is a scheme? Scheme is, you could have within the same project, you could have an application, a framework, stuff like that, and you could choose what you want to build. So right now we don't need to worry about that. And then it will ask that the third item here, or this, past this scheme name, is where to run it. And these are all the simulators that I have on my environment here. If you don't have any, you go to add additional simulators and you choose what you would like. So whatever you don't have, you add from here. and install it. It may require a download, a significant size download, but it will install. And if you have something available here, use it. I like to use, for most of the time, I like to use the highest version, Pro Max. So that's what I'm going to choose, iPhone 12 Pro Max. And I'm going to run this app just as Xcode has created it. We have not done anything to it. We want to see what happens when we run it. So when I click this play button, it is going to start building. All along, it will give you messages here, the updates. So now it's waiting for the iPhone simulator to launch. And if you don't see the simulator appear, you can go to the right and choose the simulator. Click on this. And it looks just like an iPhone. It is booting. It's a virtual phone. So we'll just wait for this thing to boot up. And what we want to do in the meantime, let's after this has booted up and we see what the app is like, look at what all these files are. So you get an idea of how Xcode creates these projects, how the operating system interprets everything. So all of that will become clear to you. So this is what is going on. It's launching our app now, and all we see is a white screen. So here, if you look at the message, it says running the app on iPhone 12 Pro Max. So my app is basically a white screen right now. Good. At least I know that there is something and it works. We'll fix it. We'll put a hello world and try to add some interactivity. So a brief overview for you of Xcode. On the left, this is, and this, if you've already seen Android Studio overview, this is very similar. Here you have the project navigator, which shows all the files. In the middle is the editor. And on the right are the properties and other panels that appear. So within this app folder, we have the first file here is app.delegate.swift. So if I double click it, it is going to load here in the editor, and it has a bunch of functions here. And this was automatically created for us. We didn't have to do anything. And this is where the operating system comes. When you compile an app and install it on a device or a simulator like we did, operating system will look for this at main and go there. This is where it starts. And this class must inherit this, like in Java, the keyword extends, we saw with app compat activity. Here it's just a colon. It inherits from these classes, responder and application delegate. And the job of the delegate is to do things, for example, tell the operating system what to do on launch, and when the application is closing, what to do, etc. All those things it does. So here it is, you can customize what happens at launch. For example, if your app requires, let's say you have a weather app, weather for your city where you live in, and every time the app is launched, you want to get the correct information. So you could put code here that makes the call to the internet server, which provides you the weather data. So while your app is launching, you have started that activity in the background. So those are the kind of things. If you need to do database setup, if you need to do anything here, you will do it here. We are not doing any such thing. So this is, and the way in Xcode, the functions are named and the way they are read is, so this function, you will say application did finish launching with options. That would be the name. And those are the options. In the same way, there is another function, application configuration for connecting. And connecting to what? Connecting to what is called the UI scene. So this UI scene is a fairly recent concept in iOS, about a year ago or so. They introduced it. And the way it is going to, we'll look at it in a moment. And this is what happens when a scene ends, when a user discards a scene session. So scene is basically like a window. The same app can have multiple windows, multiple instances. That's what this concept of scene brought in. Like when you open Microsoft Word and you open three different files to edit, they have their own windows, three different windows. This was not possible before scenes in iOS. There was always only one instance of the app running. If you change to another file, the previous one will disappear in the new one. Same using the same Microsoft Word analogy. So the scenes allow us to do that, and this function gets called when a scene is discarded, when a window of that app is closed. So if you want to do something here, optional. And all these scenes are handled by what is called the scene delegate. And this word delegate you will hear again and again. A delegate in Swift is, and I want to also introduce you to start doing things. For example, we want to know what a delegate is. You want to get the proper definition. So we'll just say what is a delegate in Swift. So the answer comes very clearly here right away. Delegates are design pattern that allows one object to send messages to another object when a specific event happens. So these delegates handle these things. For example, if you're writing a web browser, you may have a delegate. Delegate is, the entity that will perform things like, okay, the page has started loading. So let's say you have a progress bar. You start showing the progress bar. Then the delegate will say, okay, 50% loaded. You move it to 50%. Then it will say 60, 70. So that's the job of the delegate. It's listening to those events, creating those events. Okay, so this is the delegate, and this has functions like scene will connect to with these options. So it's about to create a new window with some options. Scene disconnected, did disconnect, become active. So called when the scene has moved from an inactive state to an active state. So a window that was behind has come to the forefront, and all these other functions. You can read all these comments in your own app. Then let's go to this one, main storyboard. This is where the crux of the matter is as far as we are concerned right now. This is where you design the app. So right now it is a blank canvas. This is our iPhone. And here, what it shows in this design, it can be different from the simulator you are using in the sense that I'm talking about the version. See, right now I have here as view as iPhone 11. I can change this to device to iPhone 12 Pro Max, the one that I'm running in the simulator. So I design for that, look for that. But the good thing is that you don't have to design independently, individually for each device. There are ways in which you can have one design that will run on all devices. For example, things that are in the center will remain in the center regardless of the screen size. Things that are on the right edge will remain on the right edge, those kind of things. So this is our storyboard. And this editor in which the storyboard, this middle part is called the interface builder. It allows you to build interfaces. That's why interface builder. And the storyboard has its own navigator here. It shows you what is in the storyboard. You can expand it. So it's got different objects. It's got a view controller. So within a storyboard, whatever you see on the screen is always hosted in a view controller. And if you have multiple types of screens, for example, consider the email app. When you launch it, first you see a list of emails. Then you tap an email and it opens the email. So the list is one screen, that would be one view controller. Then where you're reading the email is another screen, that would be another view controller. And if you're composing an email, that would be a different screen, that would be a third view controller. That's how you organize. Our app is very simple. It's got just one view controller right now. Okay. So right now, what happens is it has nothing on it, it's blank. And what we will do is we will add something to it. So to add it, and this sometimes changes, has changed in the past from version to version, but you look for an icon like this, it says plus library. So add something from the library. If you click on that, it tells you what you can add. These are the different things. So you can add a label, which is plain text. You can add a button, segmented control, where you show different numbers, text field if you're taking input, all the other widgets that are available to you. We'll do the simplest, we'll say label. And to add it, what you do is you click and you hold, and as you drag it on top of this, it will allow you to place it. And if you're near the center, it gives you these guidelines saying you are now right at the center, and you drop it. That's what we'll do. We'll drop it at the center. Okay. And this one right now, if I zoom in, it says label, right? If I double click it, I can change its text. Hello world. Let's put an exclamation and comma here. So hello world. And now, well, it lost the center where it was. So I'll just bring it back into the center and run it again. And we'll see what happens. So it's compiled, it's running, and it says hello world, right? That part we have got. Now I'll give you a quick introduction to how to lay things out properly. We'll look at this a lot more later on. So here, this is iPhone 12. If I were to change this, let's go to a smaller device. Let's go to iPhone 4S, a very old device. See what happens. See, this thing is not in the center anymore because the position it recalls is the X and Y coordinates. We did not say that it needs to be in the center. To do that, we could say, okay, let's bring it to the center here. But then if I change it back to the iPhone 12 Pro Max, you'll see what happens. It's not in the center. So to truly bring it to the center, here is what you're going to do. So basically, press Control on your keyboard and then click on this label and bring, you'll see a blue line appear. Bring it to this white area, which is the parent object in which this hello world label is residing. And now release it. And then it will give you what do you want to do now with respect to this. So this label, you want to say, okay, center horizontally and center vertically. So since you want to select both of these, you will press Shift on your keyboard and click one and then click the other. So it is saying here, so as soon as I did that, you will notice that a warning came. Because I dragged and dropped it, it thinks that it needs to be here. But then I'm saying, no, you be in the center. So there is like a little conflict. So what we will do is, we'll just drag and drop it into the center. Okay. And still complaining about some conflict. Let's see what's going on here. Expected 458, actual 453. There is a slight conflict, and this is the good thing about Xcode. You will run into this from time to time, so it's good that we see it here. These conflicts will appear either as warnings, so this little yellowish orangish circle here, or they will appear as red if there is a serious, conflict that it cannot resolve at all. And if you click on any of those warnings, it will ask you what to do. You can update the frames, set the frame in the canvas to match the constraint, or choose these others. So we'll just say update frames and say fix misplacement. There it is. No layout issues. Yes, this feature is called auto layout. What we are doing is auto layout. Now we will go back, and if we change the device back to 4S, what we want to see is that the label stays in the center. And it does. Okay, so that was your quick introduction to auto layout. We'll look at this a lot more in the next class. So that's where we are at right now. We can run the app just to make sure that things are looking okay. And when you run it, yeah, it should come back up to the front automatically. Hello world is what it says. Perfect. So let's go to our presentation and see what's going on here. So we have created the app. We have done a bit of exploration in terms of what the app delegate is. We even saw the scene delegate. We have seen what the iOS simulator is. So now what we will do is we will look at, we'll continue with this, and I'm going to talk about this UI kit framework in a moment. And by the way, the language we saw in these files, app delegate and scene delegate, this language is Swift. And these files end in .swift extension. And this is Swift, and most programming languages you will find have similar things going on these days. Like if you look at Java, very, very similar structure, keywords like class, import, and this uses a colon instead of saying extends. So there are similarities. You will learn to read all these different languages, very efficiently with time, and also code in any of these. You will be able to switch from one to the other. So what we want to do now is talk about events. What is an event and how we respond to it? So what happens is when you have an app, if I open some other app, let me see what I have here available to me. I have maps, right? So this app I have available here. Now, how does this app know what you are doing? Right? That's what our question is. And that's what happens through events. So when I touch somewhere, when on an actual device, you would zoom. And this on the simulator, if you press Alt and you move your mouse on it, it zooms. So basically, these are things that you do, gestures on a device. The touch screen, how does it know that you have done this to zoom or to zoom out? Or any kind of gesture, the device is moving in a certain way. There are many games that let you do that. All of those things happen through events, and that's how you build interactivity. So when you touch, there is a touch event. When you zoom, there is that zoom event. The pinch, it's called the pinch. You're pinching, either zooming in or zooming out. So these are events, and the thing we talked about earlier, delegates, is what listen to these events. So what you can do if you want to program such an event is you implement a delegate that listens to that. So what we will do now is we'll add a button and we will program an event. So we'll change the text or change the foreground or the background color in our app. So here in the simulator, if you want to press, let me just tell you a little bit about the simulator. So this simulator, mouse click is like a touch, double click is to zoom in, and there are other buttons that you have available, which you can look at them from the menu. And those coming from Windows, this is another thing for you to know, that in Mac OS, the menu for the application you are currently running is always here at the top. In Windows, it is inside the window. In Mac, it's here. See, right now I am on simulator. It is showing me the simulator menu. Let me show you what happens if I switch to Safari. This is Safari. It changed to Safari, the menu. Regardless of where that window is, where that screen is, the menu stays exactly where it is. Same thing with Xcode. It changed to Xcode. So the simulator menu gives you these buttons that you can simulate. For example, home button. Sometimes it can be hard to trigger. I'm trying to trigger the home button here, but it does something else, right? So if I just go here, device, and press home, or use this shortcut, Shift Command H, it will bring me to the home screen. Okay, and I can run my previous app, Hello World. So that's a little bit about the Mac OS. Let's go continue with our app design further. So now what I want is, I want to add a button to this. So we'll go back, see again, you'll get some repetition, good practice. Click on this plus library and choose a button this time and drop it here somewhere. Okay. So there is your button, and it just says button, right? We can change its text. So in the property inspector, or you could double click here and change it. But here, see, there is a title button. We're going to call it do something. So our button is going to do something when we press it. Now, if you run this, you should see what's going on. The button has appeared, but it does nothing because we haven't programmed it to do anything. So let's do that part now. And right now you will notice that there is a little warning here about the layout, and it is saying something like views without any layout constraints what will happen is, if we, same thing as before, if we change the device type, this button will stay where it is. It may be all over the place. So you could say add missing constraints, confirm, and it will add some constraints. So right now what it did is it added constraints relative to this hello world. So this button will now be so much distance below the hello world, regardless of the device you are on. And this hello world will be in the center of the device. So good enough for our purpose for now. Now, how does this thing communicate? How does it know what to do? Right? So we need to be able to tell the programs that when I touch this button, do something. Don't just stand there. So that's what we want. We want it to do something. And this is how you're going to do it. We need a little bit more space here. I want you to close this side panel here. So this is the button. Another good thing for you to know is how to hide these things. So this is a toggle. It shows and hides this side panel. And the same thing for this project navigator is here. Okay. And the same thing for this inner navigator of this interface builder is here. hide document outline. This also shows and hides it. So this is how you will, you adapt to these things. You will learn how to work with this. You are able to zoom in and out as well. Now what we want is, okay, no, I'm jumping the gun. Let's bring this back. I want to show you some things. These here are different inspectors. They allow you to inspect certain things. So for example, if I take my mouse and hold it here, it will tell me show the file inspector. Where this interface file is, what the file's name is. We will rarely be using this. What is of the most interest to us is these last 3 or 4. This one with the triangle is the size inspector. So whatever is selected here, the button, it's geometrical properties, how tall it is, what is the width, what is the height. Again, if we want to change it, we can come here, but most of the time this is automatic. And this is what auto layout does for us, the positioning, horizontal, vertical, etc. This is what opens by default. This is called the attributes inspector. And this is where we change the text. You can change other things, for example, you can change the font. You don't like system font, you go with system italic. The thing will become italicized. You can go with the headline and whatever the headline font for the system is. You can change its size. I think it's okay. Headline, when you choose these other fonts, the size is fixed. But if you choose system, you can choose a size. So if you choose system and you want a huge button to be there, you can just choose whatever you want. And you can change its color, the text color. I can change it to green, for example. So these are what the attributes are. And this here, this middle one that looks like a driver's license or an identity card is the identity inspector. So it tells us we have selected the button. It's telling us this button has, in your code, when you work with this button, it has implementation is in the class called UI button. What we want is this view controller, entire view controller, we want to see what class this is associated to, because that is where all those touch events will go. And to see that, you highlight the view controller in this document outline and you see its class. So this is not a default class. See, when I had the button selected, it was grayed out and it was called UI button. So it's a default class, internal system class. But when I choose view controller, it is not grayed out. It's actually solid black. Because when we created this project, Xcode created this. See, look on the left. There is a file called viewcontroller.swift. That is what this view controller is. That is the class where all the magic related to this will happen. So if I select this view controller, it tells me what it is. View controller inherits all the functionality from a system object called UI view controller, from a class defined in UIKit. UIKit is a framework that is what the storyboard that we are working with. All the different components are a part of UIKit, user interface kit. Once we import that, we have access to this UI view controller. And this function is, there is only one function here by default. It's called view did load. Do any additional setup after loading the view. So once the view is loaded, you may want to do things and those things can be done here. So our job is, how do we listen to the click on the button here? How do we tell it? For that, what we need is which objects are present in the storyboard or in particular this controller. So we need to know those. So we'll make those connections, and then we will figure out how to do this. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It's very interesting, very easy to do. Most people find this very, it's a lot of fun to do this part. So to do this, you'll go back to your storyboard. And now I want you to hide this side panel. And hover your mouse over these, what looks like these lines. And you click on them and you will see assistant. So choose this assistant option. So what we are doing is we have the storyboard open, and when we say assistant, it opens side by side the view controller.swift file. I'm going to hide this document panel so you will see them side by side, right? We've got the view and we've got the view controller, and you will see this is automatic selection. Sometimes Xcode has bugs and it does not automatically select the view controller. If that is happening, what you could also do is go back here and then click on this button, add editor on right, and then choose what you want to edit. So here you can make a selection. Okay. So these are the two ways you could do it. And to close this, you just click X. Let's do it the same way as we did before. Hopefully it works for you as well. Just click on assistant. Okay. There are some other options. This is new. I haven't seen it. This came with the recent update. Okay. Layout. Whether you want those two editors side by side or one on top of the other is what you editor on left or on top are your two options. Go with assistant, and we have this. So now we want to say which object. So what we want to do is our job is to listen to this button and change something here. So this is how you will think about it. Whatever you want to change or manipulate, you want those things here, and wherever you want to take action on something, you want those things here. So in Swift, it's called IB outlets, interface board outlets, and IB actions, interface board actions. So this is where we'll place the action. This is where we'll place the outlet. So leave a couple of blank lines here and do this. On your keyboard, press the control key, then click on this hello world and drag and bring it here. You should see that this text appears. Insert outlet or outlet collection. So when you see that, you release your mouse. And then it is going to ask you what it's going to show you what it is doing. It's creating a connection to an outlet. And it wants you to give a name. And this is of the type UI label. It's a label, UI label. So hello world label is what I'm going to call it. This is the variable name. And then you will say connect. And this is what it will do. Okay. And so remember the rule, this is what we want to change. And this is where we want to take action when do something is clicked. So from here, you do the same thing. Press Control, click and drag, and bring it here below where we type the comment IB actions and release it. And it's going to now see the type of connection is changed to action and event. Remember how we said we are going to be listening to the event? So by default on buttons, you want to listen to touch up inside. So once you touch, it does not trigger anything. It's only when you lift. So on many apps, you may have seen that sometimes you can touch a button, but if you don't mean it, you can move your finger outside of that button and release and nothing happens. So touch up inside. And these are all the other events that you have access to. touch up inside, drag, touch down, touch cancel, all this. Right now, we'll just say touch up inside and we'll give it a name. We'll call it do something. We actually don't have to call it do something. Let's call it take action. I want you to feel that you are obliged to use the same wording here and here. So let's say take action and connect. Okay. So there it is. This is the function that will be called when you touch your label, touch your button. And to see if it is actually working, you can in Swift, it's very easy. You can just use the print statement and say button touched, and it will print in the console. And I will show you what it does. Let's run this now. Okay. Now, when I say do something, let's see what happens. See, this console popped up automatically and it's repeating this message. Button touched, it appeared here. If I touch it again, every time I touch it. So we know that now we know that the execution is coming here. Now, let's actually do something. What will we do? We'll change a property of this hello world label. We know now we have a reference to this hello world label here as the outlet. So we'll use that hello world label, the same variable name, dot. And these are all the things I can do here. And I want to change its text. So very often intuitively you can guess, what property. So when you type dot after a variable name, you're accessing its properties or functions of that object. And you see there is a property called text. So I'm just going to, take a wild guess and say text and assign it some other text. Hi there. There is one difference between Swift and Java, if you have not noticed yet. You don't need to put semicolons at the end of statements in Swift. Even if you do, it won't harm you, but you don't need to. In Java, if there is no semicolon, it will not compile. So let's run this now and see what happens. Okay, so okay, the text changed, right? Good. Let's make it even more interesting. Let's say I want to change this background of this view here, right? This instead of white, I want to make it yellow, purple, whatever color you want, you can choose. To do that, what you will do is you will press Control and click in this blank area and drag here, okay? So it will create an outlet to the parent view, to the parent which has this label and the button. So I'm going to release it and see the parent view is of the type UI view. And I'm going to call it container view. It's the view that contains those, okay? So I've got container view. So now I'm going to change its color. Container view dot. Now, how do I look for color? I can just type color, right? And it will give me options for different variables that have color. So there is a background color, right? That's what I want to change. And this is something you can Google and see how to do it. I'm just going to tell you here in the interest of time. There are static objects in UI color class that let you choose the color. So let's say I want this to become, I said I'm going to go with yellow. I'm going to choose yellow, okay? So now, if I run this app, the two things should happen. The hello world should change to hi there and the view should become yellow in color. Let's see if that happens. There it is. There's nothing magical about it. It's very logical. You have to just think it through how things are happening. How did we come to this point? We first figured out, when we started, there was a blank screen. Then we found out that, oh, there is a storyboard. And if I put a label on it, it appears here. Then if I put a button on it, it appears here. If I click the button, what do I do? So then we started investigating that this window has a view controller. We saw it in the properties. Uh, I can still open the properties and select the view controller. We saw that its identity was this view controller class, which we opened here. And then we say, okay, so whatever is here, I can create outlets to those objects. So we created an outlet to the label and to the container view later on. And then we implemented this function. We created an IB action for to take action when this button is pressed. So that's how we came to this. It's fairly logical, you know. You can think it through and you will be able to do it. Now I'm going to show you a couple of things, problems that you will run into. Let's say I want to change this. I don't like this word container view. I want to call it parent view. And I edit it here, right? And I run this app. Actually, first thing that happened is it's right here. It's telling me that this is not container view is not in scope. So I have to change it in both places. So I've changed it. Looks okay, right? That there is an IB outlet called parent view, and I'm changing it here. Let's see what happens when I run it. Okay. I got a lot of information here, and my app is not showing what it is supposed to show. So when this happens, when you run into these errors, read. So right here it is telling me terminated app due to uncaught exception, NS unknown key exception. Reason this class is not key value coding compliant for the key container view. See, I renamed container view to parent view. But what happens is that connection is in two places. It is in your code, it was there as container view, but within your storyboard, let's just close this now. I want to have more space. In your storyboard, if we open these inspectors, you will see this last one that I did not talk about yet. If you hover over it, it says connections inspector. Open that. Not applicable. View controller. You have to select view controller. Then it shows all the connections you have. And you see here, this exclamation, view controller does not have an outlet named container view. So that's what happens. If you change it in the code and not here, you will have run into these problems. So what is your course of action now? One possibility is you go back to view controller and change that parent view to container view. The other possibility is you come back here to this, okay, and you delete this container view. This from here, from this list, you get rid of it. But then your outlet is not going to be functional. So it's a two-step process. If we run it, we'll still have an error because there is no parent view here. Parent view is not available here in the connections. So when I say do something, it compiled, it ran, but it did not, it says that did not find parent view. So to fix that, what you need to do is you need to go back to the main storyboard. Let's hide these other windows now, other panels, and we'll invoke the assistant editor. And this is, see, also another indication of why, how things are. You see this outlet, it has a circle with a dot inside it, meaning this is telling you that the connection is properly made. But this one doesn't have that, right? So what you will do is if you hover your mouse over this empty circle, it will turn into a plus. You will just drag and drop it to where you want it to connect. There, now it's solid. Now it should work. And here is a task for you. Go to the property inspector, look at the connections and see if parent view has appeared there. I'm just going to run it and make sure everything is running. back in business, and our variable is now renamed to parent view. Okay, so we are at about 55 minutes in this video, in this segment, and I wanted to wrap it up in an hour, so we are doing well. Let me go back to the slides and see what else we need to talk about. So this is what we just did. We changed the foreground, we changed the background color of the view. Let's recap. What have you learned so far? You got your first look at Xcode. And we talked how it is laid out, how things work, and even we touched upon how Mac is different from Windows. Some of you may find that useful. We did the app development part where you created your first app, you saw how it is laid out, what a storyboard is. Now you should have a picture in your head of if somebody tells you, can you create an app? You know what your first steps are. You know how to design, basic elements are in place. So that's a huge first step. And you also saw language fundamentals, Swift, getting, the best way, like I said, actually it's going to come later in this week's module. Learning by doing. The more you do something, the better you will get at it. I'm not going to be teaching you things like what is the Swift syntax, what is a for loop, or what is this, how to declare variables. We'll just do those things and you will adopt. You will learn. You'll make them your own knowledge. Before we end this segment, a little bit about the textbook reference material. In your course information, I have posted the syllabus. If you open the syllabus, you will see that it lists resources. So this Blackboard is going to be our place where we put all the resources. There is a textbook. It is for your own learning. I have given the link here. It's a free textbook. You don't have to pay anything. It's available on any iDevice. You have an iPhone, iPod, iPad, Mac, anything from Apple, you'll be able to read this book for free. And then when it comes to the Swift language, there is a Swift programming language by Apple, and it is available in two sources, one as a book, but also as a web edition from any operating system. If you have an Android phone, Windows PC, from any of those also you could access it. And the one other thing, some of this I'm covering in the next segment, but I want to go over the weekly schedule. You will see week by week laid out what topics we are covering approximately. See, it says here exact order may be different. We may change things around. And the last column gives you self-study reading. So this is something I would highly recommend. So for now, this week, you can read about constants, variables, and data types. And then, like this. This is something I want to do it just once now at the beginning of the semester, meaning show you, and it's your job to follow along. And I may decide to have a quiz or two, which will cover topics that are in this self-study reading. All right. So with that, let's just see what else I have here. Okay. So this is where I will stop this this segment. So hopefully you can all come up to the point where we are at. And next week we'll kick it up a notch. We'll start developing a more sophisticated, more complex application. This was just to get you started, and it's a big first step. Good job, everyone. So see you in the next segment.